5 advantages Filipinos have learning Spanish. What kind of advantages do Filipinos have in learning Spanish versus some other language? We list down 5. Large word borrowings from Spanish. In local Filipino languages, there are extensive borrowings from Spanish. Just from Tagalog alone, people treat the following words as native Tagalog, and they are shocked to find they are Spanish loanwords when they study Spanish. Words such as cuchara, tinidor, mesa, plato, or telling time, a la una, a las dos, a las tres. They're so Tagalog and yet they're so Spanish. This means for Filipinos taking beginner Spanish courses, there is already a big boost not just in confidence but in competence as well, since Filipinos already have a large vocabulary base in Spanish compared to when learning other languages. The sounds required to make are very easy for Filipinos. If you take a look at the list before, the spellings may look different, but the sounds are similar if not downright the same. Even accent-wise, Spanish speakers generally agree that Filipinos are understandable when you speak Spanish, no matter our regional identity as Tagalogs, Ilocanos, Cebuanos, etc. They might have difficulty placing where the accent comes from, but they can understand the Spanish being spoken. Compare the sounds that are required to be made versus English, for example, and Spanish is definitely easier to pronounce given the basic vowel sounds a, I, O, U that Spanish entails, which is identical to Filipino languages in general. ¿Dónde está el baño? That's in Spanish. An average Tagalog speaker might say, ¿Dónde está el baño? While an average American speaker might say, ¿Dónde está el baño? Familiarity with Hispanic culture given the big Hispanic influence on Filipinos. Very quickly, among Filipinos, who would be unfamiliar with fiestas, Spanish names of saints and festivals, religious holidays that are celebrated with the rest of the Hispanic world? Of course, that's a rhetorical question. In reality, very few. It is said that learning a language requires learning the underlying culture to really understand and appreciate the language. The strong Hispanic influence on Philippine culture and history makes learning the underlying Hispanic culture easy to understand, which should help Filipinos learn Spanish better. Friends who work abroad tell us that working with Hispanic colleagues in North or South America makes the phenomenon of acculturation, that is, adopting to another culture, Hispanic culture in this case, is easier to do, making it easier to imbibe the Spanish language from there on, since they can easily get along with Hispanic speakers given a strong affinity of Filipino culture with Hispanic culture. Familiarity with English helps in the crossover from Filipino languages. What we mostly mean here is that since Filipinos are familiar with English, from grammar to sentence structure, it's not so strange anymore than when compared with someone who only speaks the local Filipino languages and are familiar with only Filipino grammar and sentence structure, who then tries to study Spanish. You can say that having learned English, Spanish grammar and sentence structure would not look alien anymore to Filipinos. For example, Tagalog does not really have a verb to be, and the way the sentence is structured is different compared with English or Spanish. I am a man, English. Yo soy un hombre, Spanish. Ako ay lalaki, Tagalog. Here, I does not mean is or are, as most people assume, but is an inversion marker. Notice that the straightforward lalaki ako does not require I, but it means the same thing. I am a man. Anyway, since Filipinos have studied English, we are familiar with the grammar and sentence structure, so it's very straightforward to move from English to Spanish. This does not mean that English and Spanish are mutually comprehensible, as they clearly are not. But structure-wise, English and Spanish have more in common with each other relative to local Filipino languages. So having learned English, Filipinos will not find Spanish strange. Presence of local Spanish speakers in the country. In global chats with other non-Hispanic people learning Spanish, one of the more usual complaints is the inability to find local Spanish speakers to practice Spanish with. That's not much of a problem here in the Philippines given that there are local Spanish speakers and resources available, especially given the Spanish language renaissance and the BPO boom for English-Spanish speaking accounts. Additionally, the strong anti-Spanish language bias which tended to shame and dissuade Filipinos from learning Spanish in the 20th century, has abated enough to give a new lease of life to Spanish in the Philippines, given the very strong economic incentives to speak both English and Spanish in a globally competitive environment. Nowadays, there's no shame for the youth to study Spanish because of the strong economic incentives to do so, which by the way explains the dominance of English in the 20th century for Filipinos, and also the near disappearance of Spanish. So, there you have it. These are the 5 main advantages that Filipinos have learning Spanish. There are surely other reasons aside from this, so please comment below if you want to comment about other advantages that Filipinos might have when learning Spanish. Well, that's it for today. Please like and subscribe to our channel to continue to support our channel and watch more episodes on Spanish in our videos on the Hispanic Philippines. Vivan los Filipinos! Mabuhay!